So tonight's Torah portion is Deuteronomy chapter 31, 1 to 30. I am extending it to chapter 31 and 32. 32 is the sound of Moses, which is what according to the calendar of Torah teachings, what we should do next week. But I'm working on that this week. A couple of Hebrew words I'd like to add to the one Hebrew word already, or the Hebrew phrase Vayelech, is in tonight's Torah portion, in the sound of Moses particularly, which is Jeshurun, that's one word, and the other word is Nakalah. Both words are found in the sound of Moses in chapter 32 of Deuteronomy. The word Jeshurun is a name, or actually a characteristic, that's given to the upright within the camp of Israel. The word Jeshurun literally means the upright. And it's used twice in Deuteronomy, actually once in Deuteronomy, and twice in the book of Isaiah. So it's a very interesting word. Jeshurun, the upright, is what it literally means, the upright. So that's a very interesting fact, and we'll talk about that maybe a little bit. And the second word that I want to bring to light, the Hebrew word, is Nakalah, a very important word. It's found really pronounced in tonight's Torah portion, chapter 32 actually, next week's Torah portion, but I'm doing it tonight. Nakalah. The word Nakalah is heritage or inheritance. It's more accurately inheritance. Like I said last week, the word Naklah, which is a Hebrew expression for marriage, comes from the word Nakalah. So it gives you a sense of the import of the word Nakalah, a very important word. In fact, I was speaking just now of Daniela Weiss. Daniela Weiss, about 15 years ago, maybe less than 10 years ago or so, she formed an organization called Nakalah. And the purpose of the organization is to sort of condition young people people in their late teens, early 20s, people who are set to be married and to raise families, to consider the reality that the land of Israel is their heritage, and that they are the heritage of the land of Israel. That the land of Israel has a Nakalah, which is the people, and the people has a Nakalah, which is the land. And this is like 10 years ago, and it's around that time I began to be fascinated with the word Nakalah. And what I saw with the word Nakalah, and Daniela Weiss is correct, the people has an inheritance, which is the land has an inheritance, which is the people. But what I began to see is that when the people and the land are together, they become God's Nakalah. Yes, the God of the Bible has a heritage, an inheritance, a Nakalah, and which is an amazing reality to me, that he has a Nakalah. So the people and the land is his heritage. We see that in tonight's Torah portion. I'm not sure if we'll get to study it, but I just wanted to bring that to light. So no points of interest. We're just going to focus on one main point. So Moses gives his final exhortation to the people of Israel in tonight's Torah portion, chapter 31. It's his final exhortation. But what we're going to see here is that as he went along delivering that final message, God came along and changed the tone of the message. It's as if Moses was bringing the message to an end, and he was ending it on a high note. In 31, you see it. He was bringing it to end on a high note, and God took it down to a very low note. And that changed the entire, the conclusion of the message was completely changed. But changed by whom? Not by Moses, because Moses was on a high note, but God changed it. And that really colored the ending of the message, and it really colored or brought a certain tone to the song that Moses would sing. And it's a very incredible song. We're going to hopefully do justice to it tonight. So there are aspects of the songs that we're going to look at that provides for us a timeline in the very song itself. The Song of Moses is effectively a timeline. A timeline for what? A timeline for the redemption of Israel. It also points to the judgment, the chastisement of Israel, which is a theme that we don't like. We see it as negative, but it's not. Because at the end of every presentation of Israel's judgment, chastisement, comes the hope of restoration. Every time, without exception. So let's begin to look at this. So Moses announces that he is going away. How old is Moses at this point? 120? It's interesting that God said to Noah that he will not strive with man because man is flesh, but yet his days will be 120 years. So Moses lived to exactly 120, just as God said that man should live. So there might be something there to consider, I'm not sure. But we see that Moses dies at the age of 120, and who instructs him to die? Well, God does. And God says it's time for you to go, and he announces to Israel that he's going away. And he does so in a way that's not necessarily depressing. Again, it's a upbeat ending to his message and to his ministry. All right, so maybe we can read a little bit of that. He's going away. Deuteronomy chapter 31, 1-6. I guess we should read it. This is what he says to Israel as he is preparing to go. So Moses went and spoke these words to all Israel. And he said to them, I am 120 years old today. I am no longer able to come and go. And the Lord has said to me, you shall not cross this Jordan. Why is he not to cross the Jordan? Because he struck the rock, right? Twice. He struck that rock twice. We're not going to talk about it, but the symbolism of him striking the rock twice really has to do with him losing his temper and becoming angry. And actually, God called it rebellion because he didn't listen to God. So we talked about that quite a bit. It is the Lord your God who will cross ahead of you. He will destroy these nations before you, and you shall dispossess them. Joshua is the one who will cross ahead of you, just as the Lord has spoken. Very upbeat. He's bringing it to a conclusion. He's had some really negative things to say about Israel, curses and the blessings. He's had some really strong exhortations, instructions. So it's a powerful message, but he's bringing it to a close. The Lord will do to them just as he did to Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites, and to their land when he destroyed them. The Lord will deliver them up before you, and you shall do to them according to all the commandments which I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or tremble at them, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you. He will not fail you nor forsake you. That's a good conclusion. And after that, Moses calls Joshua, and he's preparing to depart. But God intervenes. And God's intervention now takes this conclusion message in a whole different direction. So let's read that. Let's read about God's intervention here. That becomes actually his actual final exhortation. Chapter 31, I'm going to read 14 to 18 for us. Then the Lord said to Moses, so God has been quiet to this point in the message. Now God speaks to Moses. Behold, the time for you to die is near. Call Joshua and present yourself at the tent of meeting, that I may commission him. So Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves at the tent of meeting. The Lord appeared at the tent of meeting in a pillar of cloud, and the pillar of cloud stood at the doorway of the tent. Usually, that's when God wants to get your attention. The Lord said to Moses, behold, you are going to lie down with your fathers, and this people will arise and play the harlot with the strange gods of the land, into the midst of which they are going, and they will forsake me and break my covenant which I have with them, made with them. So God is not optimistic at all. He's speaking in a very affirmative tone. This will happen. Right? He's spoiling Moses' wonderful ending. Then my anger will be kindled against them in that day, and I will forsake them and hide my face from them. And they will be consumed, and many evils and troubles will come upon them, so that they will say in that day, is it not because our God is not among us that these evils have come upon us? And there's a rhyme, there's a reason here that we're going to get at, right? So he's going to bring incredible evils upon them, and at that time, when all these troubles have come upon them, they will ask that question. What was the question that they would ask? Is it not because of our rebellion that these things are coming upon us? Now, I want you to understand something here. God is speaking to Israel as they're preparing to cross the Jordan into the land. That generation was incredibly upright, relatively upright, compared to the generation before it. What was their one transgression? That generation that was about to cross over? The sin of Baal Peor, right? When Balaam managed to succeed in having all the children of Israel bow down before Baal at Peor. This was their one transgression. The generation before that had transgressed against him 14 times. No. 13 times. Had transgressed against him. This generation was upright. But yet he's addressing them in a tone that says, you're not upright. Here is what you're going to do. So what is happening here? He's speaking not to that generation, but he's speaking to the generation to come. That generation that will come into the land and be a harlot. That's what it said. And betray him and turn against him and worship other gods. So it's a prophetic word. It's a prophetic word. Now you have to consider Israel standing there. You know, Phinehas did what he did, and he stayed the hand of God, and they're seeing themselves as pretty upright. We're not like our fathers before us. And suddenly this word comes to them that this is going to happen. And it's again in the affirmative. It's going to happen. This is going to happen. Let's read. Now, 19, now therefore write this song for yourselves and teach it to the sons of Israel. Put it in their lips so that this song may be a witness for me against the sons of Israel. So this song is not just a happy, cheerful, rejoicing type song. It's a witness against them. So that when they transgress and all of the punishments come upon them, the song will remind them of their transgression. You understand what I meant when I said God took this in a whole different direction, right? He brought it down low. Right? Moses had a wonderful conclusion building. God decided something else. For when I bring them into the land flowing with milk and honey, which I swore to their fathers, and they have eaten and are satisfied and become prosperous, then they will turn to other gods and serve them, and spurn me, and break my covenant. Then it shall come about, when many evils and troubles have come upon them, that this song will testify before them as a witness. It's a witness against them. For it shall not be forgotten from the lips of their descendants. For I know their intent which they are developing today, before I have brought them into the land which I swore to them. So he's saying, I know what's coming. I know what's in their heart. Even before they came into the land, before they made it into, he knew what was coming. And he's saying that this song will be a sort of a witness, a testimony, a reminder, right? A reminder. So Moses wrote this song the same day and taught it to the sons of Israel. I want to say to you that Moses had no idea that he'd be writing a song. He had no clue that this was coming. As far as he was concerned, in chapter 31, he was about to bring this incredible message to an end. He was going to walk away and die. God comes along and says, no. This people is going to transgress horribly. I want you to write a song and that they would remember this song. And this song will remind them of the transgressions that they have not yet committed, that they will commit 500 years into the land. Isn't that amazing? Now, I checked to see how the Jewish people treat tonight's Torah portion and the Song of Moses. And no, they're not quite treating it the way God wanted them to treat it. Yeah, not the conservative Jews or the Reform Jews. Perhaps the Orthodox Jews will take a more level-headed biblical look at this Song of Moses and what's happening in tonight's Torah portion. But what I saw from the treatment that's given to this Torah portion, it's very Jewish. It's very, very Jewish. It's about Moses going and looking into the land and not having hope, but having hope. No, that's not the purpose of tonight's Torah portion, not according to what we just read. The purpose of tonight's Torah portion is to call Israel to accountability and to give them a song, a perpetual song, that will constantly remind them of some very important factors. And we will look at those factors here in a few moments. A lot of the song has to do with Israel's transgression against God and the penalty. But the song ends on a tremendous high note. And the high note has to do with judgment of us, the nations. You say, how can that possibly be a high note? It is a high note. Because what happens then, of course, is God's kingdom is established. Israel is restored to the land of Israel. She becomes the bride of the Holy One of Israel, the people that she was created to be, and God establishes order in the earth. That's how the song comes to an end. Tremendous. So Moses now gets this word from God that you're going to sing a song. Here's the outline for the song. You decide the lyrics, and Moses puts together this song. So before he sings the song, he goes to Israel, and he declares to Israel that you're going to transgress against God. That's what I just heard from God, and I'm just here to tell you, you are going to transgress against God. Here's the good news. You're going to sin horribly before God. And God wants me to give you a song. How many people do you suppose was dancing as he sang the song? If you read the entire song, not much to dance about there. It's not a song of revelry. It's not a song of jubilance at all. It's a somber song, to say the least. So Moses now turns to the people of Israel, verse 24. And it came about when Moses finished writing the words of the law in the book until they were complete, that Moses commanded the Levites who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, saying, take this book of the law and place it beside the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, that it may remain there as a witness against you. A witness against Israel. For I know your rebellion and your stubbornness. Behold, while I am still alive with you today, you have been rebellious against the Lord. How much more when after my death? Assemble to me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, that I may speak these words in their hearing, and call the heavens and the earth to witness against them. For I know that after my death you will act corruptly and turn from the way which I have commanded you, and evil will befall you in the latter days. For you will do that which is evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him to anger with the works of your hands. So Moses is being faithful to God. God gave him this message. I'm going to give you a song. Write in this song the words that I give you. And he goes back to Israel. He says, get ready, folks. You're about to rebel. I have a song for you. And the song begins with glorification for God. That's how it begins. Let me see if I can follow what I have written here. Yep. The song is actually an indictment against Israel, most of it. But it begins with a glorification of God. The song is a prophetic song. It's like a timeline of how God is going to interact with his people in regards to their iniquity, their sin, and ultimately how he will judge them and bring them back into the land and respond to those who treated them badly. A consistent theme. The entire book of Joel, folks, 3 chapters, the entire book of Joel is framed in this exact way. Joel chapter 1, we've talked about this before. Joel chapter 1, God's going to drive Israel into the nations. Joel chapter 2, he'll begin the process of restoration. He'll bring them back. Joel chapter 3, he will judge the nations that ill-treated them. Timeline, very vivid. The song carries more or less the same timeline, the same essence. Right? But it begins with a glorification of God. We see that in chapter 32, 1 to 4. And verse 5 is where he begins to put the emphasis on their corruption. That's when the indictment against Israel really begins, in chapter 32, 5 and onwards. Maybe we can read a little bit of it. Let's see. How much do we want to read? The indictment. They have acted corruptly towards him. This is a song now. And by the way, there seems to be no rhyme in the songs. in this song. No rhyme at all. Just it's almost as if he's preaching, but it's a song. They have acted corruptly towards him. They are not his children because of their defect. They have a defect. But are a perverse and crooked generation. Do you thus repay the Lord, O foolish and unwise people? Is not he your father who has brought you? He has made you and established you. Again, the indictment just goes on like this. It's pretty heavy, right? It's really, really heavy. So as the song goes on, Moses begins to talk about how God's going to judge them. We don't want to read too much of it because it's pretty heavy as well. We read just a little bit of it. So the song goes on to talk about what God will do as a result of the charges that he brings against them. Who brings the charges against them? Did Moses do this in his own, by his own initiative? No, God brought the charges against them. Right? So he lays out the indictment, and then he talks about what he's going to do. It's pretty vivid. 19. The Lord saw this and spurned them because of the provocation of his sons and daughters. Then he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end shall be, for they are a perverse generation, sons in whom is no faithfulness. They have made me jealous with what is not God. They have provoked me to anger with their idols, and it just goes on. Again, it's not pleasant to read, but it's a song. It's a song of Moses. It's what Moses sang. So God is going to he brings an indictment. He's going to judge Israel. The song begins to shift as you go along. And then all of a sudden he begins to talk about vindication of Israel in the very song. In the very song that he brought an indictment against Israel, he stated what he will do to Israel. He begins to talk about a vindication of Israel upon those who have ill-treated Israel. Let's read about that. So in chapter 32, same, the song of Moses, 34 and 36 to 36, he's now shifting here. He's referring to the nations that have ill-treated Israel. Is it not laid up in store with me, sealed up in my treasuries? Vengeance is mine, and retribution in due time their foot will slip. He's not talking to Israel here. He's not speaking of Israel here. He's speaking of the nations. For the day of their calamity is near, and the impending things are hastening upon them. For the Lord will vindicate his people, and will have compassion on his servants. When he sees their strength is gone, and there is none remaining, bond or free. So God is going to vindicate his people. Who's his people? In the context of the song, the people, of course, is Israel. And his servants, he will vindicate them. Vindicate them on account of whom? On account of the nations that had suppressed them. And then, at the end of the song, the very last verse in this incredible song, God points to a time when the nations will honor Israel and rejoice with Israel. Let's read verse 43. Rejoice, O nations, with his people, and he will avenge the blood of his servants. His servants, Israel. But rejoice with his people, O nations, and will render vengeance for his adversaries, and will atone for his land and his people. Again, his Nakala, the land and the people. Now, there is no question in my mind, Joel, the prophet Joel, knew this song very well. Knew it very well. Because in Joel chapter 3, when Joel begins to talk about judgment that will come upon the nations, it is the same theme. How they have related to his land and his people. He will bring judgment upon them. But it's interesting that in verse 43, it begins, rejoice, O nations, with his people. Who do you suppose that the prophet Moses is referring to? There's no question. Moses had a prophetic event when he sat and wrote this song. God gave him the outline for the song. He wrote it. The Holy Spirit moved in him. He's a prophet. And he begins to express prophetically what is to come. Again, the sins of Israel, the judgment of Israel, the time when he will turn his face towards Israel yet again, and he will vindicate those who have struck his people Israel. And then, at the end, that wonderful statement, rejoice, O nations, with his people. Who do you suppose Moses the prophet is seeing? Who do you suppose he's speaking to? Of the nations. God is going to select a body of people of the nations. And when he sees them, he will see them as just that, a collective of people of the nations, perhaps representing the nations, but will not be the nations. But so he's declaring, rejoice with his people. I think this is for us. I think it's for us. Isaiah chapter 25, the same theme. Isaiah chapter 25 is about that time when God will bring judgment upon the nations. We talked about that most recently. And right in the midst of the chapter 25 of Isaiah, it talks about how Israel will hear rejoicing from the nations. That they will hear, we're going to read it. So I want you to see the consistency of this. The sound of Moses, at the time when Israel is almost at its end, according to what we just read here. Let's read verse 36 again. For the Lord will vindicate his people, he'll have compassion on his servants, when he sees their strength is gone, and there is none remaining, bond or free. So he's going to bring Israel through this process of redemption, and when Israel is almost at its end, that's when he intervenes. That's the story of Israel, folks. That falls into alignment with the history of Israel. Think of Nazi Germany. Israel was at its end. And that's the moment when God intervened in the clearest way. God's intervention after the Nazi terror on Israel was so vivid. So I'm telling you, verse 36 points to what God did with the Nazis, how he intervened. Again, and their strength, let's read that part again. When he sees their strength is gone, he intervenes powerfully. And at the end of that, again, rejoice, O nations. Now, the prophet Isaiah saw this in Isaiah 25, and we should go and take a look at this. Isaiah chapter 25 now. We read this a little while back. And you know what? It's Isaiah 24. Not Isaiah 25. Isaiah 24. I stand corrected. So, Isaiah 24 is very much about what's occurring in the nations today. There's a curse upon the nations. The curse upon the peoples. Can't you see that? What do you think? You think we're in the condition we're in because we're not cursed? We're in the condition that we're in because we're cursed. Humanity is cursed. Isaiah 24, 1-6 is all about that. In verse 6 of chapter 24, therefore a curse devours the earth, and those who live on it are held guilty. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burnt, and few are left. Book of Revelation things. But in the midst of this judgment, again, we're going to see that among the nations there's going to be rejoicing. Let's read it. Verse 13-16. For thus it will be in the midst of the earth among the peoples, as the shaking of an olive tree, as the gleanings when the grape harvest is over. They raise their voices, they shout for joy. They cry out from the west concerning the majesty of the Lord. Therefore glorify the Lord in the east, the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, in the coastlands of the sea. From the ends of the earth we hear sounds, glory to the righteous one. That's a fulfillment of what Moses said, or actually what God said in that sound. The sound of Moses, that's so incredibly negative, but yet so incredibly conclusively powerful. Because it's the source of Bible prophecy. I've told you before that Israel, from Mount Sinai to Mount Nebo, that whole experience is the basis of all Bible prophecy, especially as it relates to Mount Sinai and the message that God gave to Israel at Mount Sinai, Leviticus chapter 26. Leviticus chapter 26 is the cornerstone of all prophecy. All prophecy that we find in the Bible finds its basis in Leviticus chapter 26 and in this song as well. Yeah. Because this song is perhaps, I'll have to check it, but I'm saying perhaps, the very first time God points to a time when he will judge the nations. We don't see it in the Torah, except the very end of the Torah, where God says that he will judge the nations. On what basis? On the basis of how they've reacted to his people Israel. He says he's going to vindicate Israel. Right? So, very vivid. The song is pretty incredible. I suggest you read it. It's tough. It's really tough reading. But I suggest you read it. Let me say something about what we consider to be negative. All right? So we see judgment, God's judgment, as being negative. And we tend to let it beat us down, beat us up a little bit. Well, it shouldn't. Because all of this has come to pass as it relates to Israel. All of it is over. Israel is no longer in this place. If you have to be concerned about something, concerned about what's coming upon the nations. Yes, judgment. But God says there's going to be a people that will rejoice with his people. They're going to hear among the nations in the east and the coastlands in the west a voice rejoicing over what God has done. Israel. And that's our opportunity. You see, when Moses said when he sang that last verse, rejoice, O nations, with his people, that's for us. That's for me. And that's for you. And that's for any believer in Messiah who would see this and appropriate this in their lives. One of our plights, I should say, one of the plights we have as believers is we create our own significances. We create the things that we deem to be important for ourselves. You know, whatever my sub-agenda is. Yes, I'm serving in the kingdom, but I have these other things that I'm doing. Quite often, those other things takes precedent over the reality of what you're supposed to be doing in the kingdom to begin with. So, we tend to distract ourselves with interests. And we say, oh, but it's God. May not be. May not be at all. It might very well be you. Your own desire, your own inclinations. Have you truly sought God's face? In every little matter. Did you fast and pray? Did you hear from him? Really? Or is it just something that you do because it's good? We've got to be honest. We've got to be honest. We want to walk by faith. Now, let me just wrap this up. I did plan to talk a little bit about the prophet Hosea. So, we saw here that God brought an indictment against Israel. Israel, she plays the harlot. She betrays him. She goes after other gods. And God will send her out into the nations like a good husband or a betrothed, someone who has betrothed a wife to be and she's unfaithful. He's going to reject her. He's going to send her off. But not without the intent to fully bring her back and take her to be his wife. See, God has proven that he's not a man that will refuse his wife, reject his wife because of idolatry, or his wife to be because of idolatry. He's proven that even with idolatry, he will bring his bride back to himself and take her once again. So he's not a man. Man, too much pride. Pride will certainly get in the way of such a thing. Wouldn't it? I mean, honestly, guys, if you had a wife-to-be, if you've betrothed someone, if you've engaged someone, and that person runs out and commits adultery on you, proud guys, what would you do? Oh, I'm not going to. What? No, never. Never. Burn her. You're Judah. Remember Judah? Burn her, right? Not God. God knew that his wife would commit adultery on him, his wife-to-be will commit adultery on him, yet he prepared an engagement party to be in the future. So God saw way beforehand that his wife-to-be will betray him. He said that she would. He had a plan of dispersion, a plan of chastisement, a plan of correction. But he looked to that time when he will bring her back and take her to be his wife once again. That's forgiveness. That's grace. That's mercy. That's God. That's the love of God that affords such mercy and grace. Hosea the prophet. I want to end with this. Hosea was a prophet of the northern kingdom at its absolute worst period. 10 tribes in the north. The worst form of apostasy. Hosea is speaking to Israel, and Israel is an abomination. They've gone off and formed a different religion. They're worshiping false gods, idols. They've created a new form of sacrifice. They've done everything abominable against God, and they're worshiping idols. And the prophet Hosea comes right out and tells them that God's going to reject you. He's going to send you off. Hosea chapter 2. I want to read a little bit for you from verse 8 going onwards. For she who does, Israel, for she does not know what it was I who gave her the grain, for she does not know that it was I who gave her the grain and the new wine and the oil, again indictment, and lavished on her silver and gold, which they used for Baal. So the good things that God had lavished the people of Israel with, they gave to Baal, they attributed to Baal. Therefore I will take back my grain at harvest time, my new wine in its season. I will also take away my wool and my flax, given to cover their nakedness. And then I will uncover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and no one will rescue her out of my hand. I will also put an end to her gaiety, her feasts, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her festal assemblies. I will destroy her vines and her fig trees, of which she said, these are my wages, which my lover has given to me, and I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field will devour them. So, remember what I said, Israel had invented different festivals, basically a different religion, observing different Sabbaths, observing this different festal times. God is saying, I despise those. He never ordained any of them. The festivals and the order of worship that he ordained was completely changed. So he's making a very clear statement here. I will punish her for the days of the Baals, when she used to offer sacrifices to them, and adorn herself with her earrings and jewelry, and follow her lovers, so that she forgot me, declares the Lord. But then, in the midst of this charge from God against the people of Israel, the northern kingdom, he then begins to talk about a time when he will bring them back and take them to be his wife. Therefore, behold, I will allure her, bring her into the wilderness, and speak kindly to her. He's talking about the diaspora, when he would drive them into the wilderness. And there is where he's going to begin to speak kindly to her. Why? Because he has chastised her with the most heavy chastisement. Taken away from the land, taken away from Yerushalayim, driven out into the nations. That's when he's going to speak kindly to her. Then I will give her her vineyards from there. In other words, folks, he's going to prepare the land of Israel while they are in the wilderness, while they are in the diaspora. And the valley of Achor as a door of hope. And she will sing there as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Egypt. It will come about in that day, declares the Lord, that you will call me Ishi. What's Ishi? Husband. Husband. And will no longer call me Bali, my Baal, my Lord, my master. So you will not call me my master, my Lord, Bali. You will call me Ishi, my husband. For I will remove the names of Baals from your mouth so that they will be mentioned by their names no more. In that day I will also make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, the birds of the sky, and the creeping things of the ground. And I will abolish the bow and the sword and war from the land, and I will make them lie down in safety. I will betroth you to me forever. Yes, I will betroth you to me in righteousness and in justice, in loving kindness and in compassion. And I will betroth you to me in faithfulness. Then you will know the Lord. Again, this reference that we see here is so consistent with what we see in Jeremiah, in Ezekiel. God's betrothal of his people Israel. They betrayed him, he will betroth them. You see that? He is faithful, more faithful than any man can ever be. We allow pride to get in the way. God is faithful to the very end. One of the things I want to touch on before we come to an end is this. This song that we just looked at is prophetic. It is something that every Christian who's interested in Bible prophecy should consider and should study well. Because the framework for all prophecy is hidden away in that song. Too often in Christianity, we see Israel as a timeline, right? Israel is the timeline for what purpose? The Song of Moses is a timeline. The prophet Joel is a timeline. The entire Bible paints a picture of what is a timeline. But Christianity, we see Israel as a timeline. What does that mean? Have you heard that sentence before? Have you heard that statement made before? Israel is the timeline. The timeline for what? Right? The rapture. So if you want to know about when the rapture is going to happen, look at Israel. You'll know. Israel is not a timeline. Israel is a compass. I want you to remember that. Israel is a compass, because when we set our eyes on what God is doing with Israel, we are corrected. Too much of Christianity is completely distracted, completely prophetically speaking lost. And we should not be. We should understand Bible prophecy more than anyone else. But the best Bible prophecy teachers of today, the best as it relates to people in the world of Christianity, the best of today that teaches Bible prophecy are completely sidetracked. Even now, just completely out there. And they don't have the right compass. Israel is that compass. If you set your mark on Israel, if you put Israel at your point of your true point, your point of direction, you will know Bible prophecy. You will understand the deep things of Bible prophecy that many cannot. Even today, folks, the most renowned Bible prophecy teachers of today are still saying, we don't quite understand the book of Revelation. So it's a mystery. We pull a little here, we pull a little there, we insert a little there, and we come up with this contraption of Bible prophecy. Why is that? Because we're locked into errant doctrine, errant prophetic doctrine. We're locked into it, and we can't seem to break free. We're not breaking free. We're not breaking free because Israel is a timeline and not a compass for us. God has given us something to keep us focused on the kingdom of God, and that is the people of Israel. When we set our eyes on what God is doing with Israel as it relates to the establishment of his kingdom, you will not get lost in that land of confusion, Bible prophecy confusion. Folks, God has treated us so well. He's given us so much insight. He has favored us incredibly in allowing us to see things that most people will not see. And why will they not see it? Because they're looking in the wrong places. They're looking at Israel in the wrong light. Their motivation is skewed. Their motivation is selfish. I'm going to get out of here. My rapture, my time to be raptured is coming. Rather than saying, my time for service is coming. I've been conscripted into a great work. And that time when I will become active in this work is at hand. Instead, we're looking for a ticket out of here. I just love the way that Moses composed this song. Of course, God gave the song to him. I just love the way Moses did it. And he's the first to do it, really. To chart the course of Israel, all the way from their rebellion, the worshiping of Baal, to the time when the nations will rejoice with them. Folks, he's talking about Sukkot. He's talking about that time when all the nations will come up and celebrate Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles. So from Baal to Sukkot, the sound of Moses. From idolatry to a time when there will be a shout among the nations, glory to God, glory to the righteous one, as Isaiah said. So I want to tell you, many of us were beaten down a little bit, the weight of everything, COVID, hurricane, the prospect of even another storm brewing out in the Atlantic. Yeah, these things can be heavy, these things can weigh us down. But I want you to know that the things that God has for you, eyes have not seen, nor ears have heard, nor has any mind been able to conceive of what it is God has for you, the good things that he has for you. And so what if we go through a difficult time? So what if there's another storm? So what if another virus comes? We are not set apart for destruction. We are sanctified for God's glory. We are the ones in the most difficult of time that will shout praises to God among the nations, and Israel will hear it. We must never lose focus about our actual function in this time. It's easy to happen. Get distracted with this, get distracted with that, and lose that incredible purpose to be a light, an encouragement, a source of life to Israel, which we have the capacity to do. We've done it. We need to put our emphasis there, not get distracted, not allow the things that are happening to pull us away from where we should be focused. Israel needs, I'm going to say it this way, Israel is in need of your devotion to God. Israel needs it. And they're asking for it. They are remembering all the years that you were there in Kedumim, when you prayed and things happened, when they saw miracles, real miracles. Now they haven't had that for 2.5 years, and they're looking for it again. There's a good likelihood that they're going to want us to spend a whole week there again. From what I'm hearing, we'll see how it goes. It's in God's hands. But I want to tell you this. If that happens, if we do go for a week because they are clamoring for it, expect something really good to happen. Expect something really wonderful to happen. And as it is, every time we go, it is for you to pray. Those who go, we're just the front line. The real work is here. That's where the real work is. The real work concerning next year's trip has already begun. It's real work. It's on your knees type work. It's on your elbows type work. It's work that really counts. Shabbat Shalom.